Good morning, Oasis Community Church. Pastor Caleb here. Welcome to Good Friday. I wanted to say a few things this morning. One, to keep us all updated, get us some information, but also to kind of prepare our hearts and our minds and our attitudes, not only for our live stream service later today, but for Good Friday as a whole. So first off, what I wanted to talk about was our 90-day Bible challenge. Today, if you're keeping up with our schedule, we finally finish Malachi and we turn the page on the first 4 chapters of the book of Matthew. That's exciting. The New Testament is massive. It's been about 75% of all of our reading thus far, taken every single day since we started at the beginning of February. So this is a big deal. We're there. We're all the way to the birth of Jesus at this point. It's a great time to be reading through the Gospels. Now, I want to give you a little bit of information about the Gospels as a whole, because honestly, when these books were written, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they were different. They were new. We didn't really have a literary genre called gospel at that point in time. The word gospel obviously means good news, so there's something to be said about how they've titled their narratives about the life of Jesus. There's something of a proclamation in them, right? It wasn't just general kind of good news. This was the type of word you'd use to describe the birth of a king, the birth of a ruler, someone who was so important they were going to change the history of humanity, perhaps forever, in this case, for eternity. But each one of the gospel writers, they're not just writing history, they're also writing theology. They're trying to persuade people not just that something happened in the life of Jesus, but what happened and perhaps what they ought to believe about what happened. So it is historical in nature, but it's also theologically driven. So when you read each one of these Gospels, you're going to see that not only are they written differently, partially because of who they're written to. At the beginning of the book of Luke, you'll see he's writing to a Greek man named Theophilus with the intent of making him informed about all the things that have been happening in Jerusalem around this Jesus person. But then you're going to read the book of Matthew, and it seems like he has a whole lot more to say about the Jewish law and the literature, and he's going to bring out the Pharisees a whole lot more in his gospel, and he's seems to have the intent of trying to convince Jewish people to believe in Jesus as the Messiah. Then, as we've been reading through the book of Mark, you're going to notice that he's a lot more driven towards clarifying Jesus' intent of faith. Some people would argue that he's intently trying to push the gospel away from the Jews and into the hands of Gentile people, pagan believers. So they have a different audience that they're writing to, but they also have different backgrounds. Luke, we believe, was a physician or some sort of scholar of some kind, and Matthew, we know, was a tax collector. John Mark, probably the apprentice or the scribe of the apostle Peter. They have different backgrounds, and so take, for example, John, who was the disciple that Jesus loved. We're not quite to Sunday yet, right? We're not quite to Easter yet, but when you read the Easter narrative in the book of John, the Gospel of John, and then you contrast it with what Luke says, Luke records 2 disciples running to the tomb, Peter and John. But in John's Gospel, John makes a point to say, well, actually, the disciple whom Jesus loved, that's another way of saying me, John, got to the tomb before Peter did. He outran him. And you have this interesting moment where John seems to be poking fun at Peter because he's trying to say, I beat you in a race, and I got to the tomb first. And what does that say about what he's trying to say about his love and his devotion to Christ, right? There are these brief moments in the Gospels where we get to see unique aspects of Jesus' character and the character of the disciples, and specific things that they're intending us to understand about who he was. So be on the lookout for those unique aspects as you read through the 4 Gospels, which we finally get to begin doing in our 90-day Bible challenge today. Now, A few words to get us prepared for what this day means. First off, don't forget about our Good Friday service, our live stream service tonight at 6 p.m. We'll have the link up on the front page of the website. I think it's already there. We'll be posting it on Facebook several times today. Share it with your friends. Let's get people involved. Don't forget to get your communion kits. We've already delivered those to people who have contacted us asking for deliveries. Many of you have already come by to get your kit. Each baggie has enough elements for 5 people in it, so you only need 1 for a typical family. But don't forget to come by and get them today. I will be here at the church, presumably, unless something happens, all day. And the door to the front office is open, and there's a box there with all the communion kits. So don't forget to come pick them up or contact us if you need us to drive them out to you. The last thing I want to say. One of the things I'm very passionate about on Good Friday is being careful not to move quickly past or avoid the tragedy, the sorrow, and the mourning that first Good Friday would have brought. The first thing I saw after I woke up and I got ready for work this morning is I got onto Facebook to see what the world was doing. And I had already seen several images posted that said, Happy Good Friday, or It's Friday, but remember, Sunday's coming. Remember, Sunday's coming. And I think you're going to hear a lot of preachers, a lot of pastors around the world, around America today, who are going to give their Good Friday service and their sermon almost like an Easter service and an Easter sermon. And I'm concerned about that because I never want to treat the day that Jesus conquered sin as if it's some sort of blot or a dark mark on the scorecard of Christianity, right? Sometimes it feels like we say, yeah, it's Good Friday, but let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about how Jesus suffered, about how he died, about all the wrongdoing and the sin of the world, the corruption of people, of humanity that led him to have to do that. We want to kind of skip by it, and we want to jump immediately to the joy of Sunday morning. And listen, we're going to have joy on Sunday morning. I'm not trying to downplay that either. But imagine how the disciples were feeling. None of the gospel writers skip to Sunday. In fact, Mark, who will be reading his narrative of the betrayal and the crucifixion today, he devotes I want to say more than 8%, 10% almost, of his entire gospel to just one weekend of Jesus' life. He's alive for 3 years. His ministry is 3 years long, and Mark devotes 10% almost of his gospel to the events of 1 week or 1 weekend. I mean, if we're talking the whole week, it's actually 35% of his gospel to 1 week out of 3 years. Imagine what that implies about the importance of the cross, about the importance of what happened today. And imagine how the disciples were feeling. How were they processing the reality that they weren't sure? They're wrestling through their doubts, their convictions about all the things that they'd done while Jesus was suffering, and also whether or not he was actually going to come back. They had just put their faith in him as the Messiah, and now he's gone. And they had to work through that. They had to mourn before the morning came. And if you were here with us last year at our Good Friday service, that was our whole theme. The mourning, the weeping, the sadness that comes before the morning, and how that's such a crucial and important part of the depth of our Christian faith. So don't jump too quickly to Sunday, because we have work to do on Friday in our hearts, in our souls, in our spirits. And that's what we're going to be doing tonight at 6 p.m. with our live stream service. You'll find us on Facebook on the front page of our website, oasiscma.org. Don't forget to come in and get your communion packets or call us and we will deliver them to you. I'm very excited for what today has for us. I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon.